of the series, we dealt more with Adam's choice. Now we're going to look at the choice that the first child of Adam had to deal with, Cain's choice. Well, last week we defined what a choice was, and I just want us to go over that and refresh our minds. We defined a choice as an act of making a decision, of selecting or making a decision when faced with two or more possibilities. An act of selecting or making a decision when faced with two or more possibilities. And we said that for that to happen, every choice requires that there will be options and there will be preferences. You cannot make a choice if all you have is one thing. You make a choice when there is more than one option, and you have to prefer one over the other. We said last week that life is simpler without a choice, and many times we all wish that we would not make a choice, that somebody would tell us what to do, or there is only one thing to do. And we would do it. We wish that there was no devil, there was only God. And then we worship God. We wish that there was no opportunity to sin, and that every opportunity will lead to righteousness. But life will give us options because God has given us free will. The life without option is the life of a beggar and a slave, and God wants us to live in dignity. So He created us with a free will. He created us to know the right from the wrong, and He created us to do His will willingly. And last week we talked about the three big choices that Adam was faced with. He was faced with the choice of what to feed on. Secondly, he was faced with the choice of how to call the things that came his way. And then the third choice, whom to come or welcome into his life. And I said that these are choices we also have to make in our lives. We have to choose some of these things or these things regularly. What to feed on, what we're going to nourish ourselves with, what we're going to allow to enter into our system. We're going to choose how to call the things that come our way, because you cannot predict everything that comes your way, but you have to name it. If you name it impossible, nothing will be possible to you. If you name it possible, all things are possible to you. You have to choose whom you welcome into your life. Relationship is not by force, and friendship is not by force. So now, let's look at the big choice that Adam's first child, Cain, had to be faced with. You know the story. Cain and Abel, the first two sons of Adam and Eve, bring a sacrifice to God, and Cain's sacrifice is rejected, and Abel's sacrifice is received by God. And that creates problems for Cain because he's the older brother and his sacrifice is not accepted. So let's pick up that story from Genesis chapter 4, verses 6 to 7. Genesis chapter 4, verses 6 to 7. Genesis, you know, is at the beginning of your Bible. Don't go too far. It's right there from the beginning. Genesis chapter 4, verses 6 and 7. So the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. Why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desire is for you, but you should rule over it." It's very interesting how God always presents options to us. He did the same to Adam and Eve. He's doing the same to Cain. He tells him the options available and advises him on the right option, but God will not make a choice for you. That's one of the things we have to get right, that God will not make a choice for you. No matter how long you pray about a choice, you have to choose sometime. You can pray about it, fast about it, meditate on it, go on retreat about it, but at a certain point, the prayer must end, the fasting must end, the retreat must end, and you have to choose. And if you're waiting for God to make that choice, you will pray and fast and pray and fast till there is nothing to pray and fast about, because your whole body will be wasted. You have, at a certain point, after you've prayed, you've fasted, you've meditated, you've sought advice, you've sought counsel, at a certain point, you have to make a choice. And sometimes we go on praying about something for a very long time because we are scared of making a choice. Well, Cain's sacrifice is rejected. And he gets angry. He gets very, very angry. And if you read the word anger in the original language, it means it carries the idea of burning. So he was not just like angry, like, I'm upset. No, he was boiling inside. This guy was really, really angry. And not only was he angry, the Bible says his countenance had fallen. He was disappointed. He was disappointed because something had not gone the way he wanted. Several emotions are going through Cain. Anger, pain, disappointment, resentment, envy, hatred, and all of these are boiling inside him because his sacrifice has not been accepted and his brother's sacrifice has been accepted. Have you ever felt rejected before? Have you ever felt rejected? And when you felt rejected, how did you respond? Because that's what we're going to look at today. You have a choice as to how you deal with rejection, disappointment, and failure. You have a choice. And God is telling Cain, you have a choice. Yes, you've been rejected, you have failed, you tried something, it didn't work, and somebody is getting on ahead of you. But you have a choice how to respond to this. Because in life, somebody is going to get ahead of you. You're not always going to be the best. Somebody will get ahead of you. And you have a choice how to respond to that. But it's interesting that when God comes to Cain, he doesn't even tell him what to do. Just like he did to Cain's father. When Adam and Eve sinned, God didn't come and say, hey, you have sinned. God always comes with questions. Adam, where are you? Cain, why are you angry? Because God will always come to you with questions. So, why does God ask us questions? Why did God ask Cain questions? Why did God ask Adam and Eve questions? God asks us questions for three reasons. First, because he wants us to think deeply about something. He wants us to see things from the surface. Cain is angry. God says, why are you angry? Adam has sinned. God says, where are you? And many times when you are in a state, God is going to ask you a question. And the reason is because he wants you to think deeply about what's going on. He wants you to think deeply about it. Because if you don't think deeply about it, emotion is going to drive you. Emotions are good. But when emotions drive you, you can do crazy things. You can do crazy things. You read the newspaper always. You hear about a husband who's murdered a wife, mutilated a wife, poured some acid on a wife. You hear of wives who are doing the same thing to their husbands. You hear of children who have done similar things to their parents. Parents have done it to children. And you ask, what led to that? Because they didn't ask themselves the question, why am I angry? What is it? Why am I upset? So God comes to ask you a question because he wants you to think deeply about the thing. Secondly, he wants you to face the truth about yourself. Why are you angry? Not why has somebody annoyed you, but why are you angry? What's the truth? He wants you to face the truth about ourselves. He wants us to do deeper self-examination. Many times we are so focused on ourselves that we just offer superficial answers. If you're going to really make choices in your life, you have to think deeply, you have to face the truth. And the third thing, God asks us questions because he wants us to see things the way he sees it. He wants us to see things the way he sees it. God uses questions to open our eyes to his point of view. Because God saw the issue differently from Cain. He didn't see the way Cain was seeing it. Cain saw what had happened as finality. God saw it as something that could change. Because if you listen to the third question that God asks in verse 7, God says, if you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do well, will you not be accepted? What God is saying literally is that, listen, this is not the end of the world. It's not a lost cause. You can win at this thing. You can come back. You can recover. It can be better. Because, you know, when you go through life and you think that what you're going through is a finality, your response to it is very different from when you think it can change. Is that not so? If you don't have any money now, you're broke. And when I mean broke. You're really broke. You owe your landlord rent. You owe the utility companies, God bless them. You owe them bills. You owe some school fees for your children. And everywhere you go, life is hard for you. When you get to a point where you think this is the end, this is how life is going to go for the rest of my life, you can be suicidal. Because when you see it as a finality, you can make very drastic, permanent decisions. However, if you see that this thing is only a temporary situation, that tomorrow will be better, the next year will be better, your response will be totally different. So God is saying to Cain, you messed up, your sacrifice was not accepted, I rejected it, but if you do well, you will be accepted. This is not the end. You can go back, you can re-strategize, and you can do it again, and it will get better. That's God's perspective. So he's trying to get Cain to see things from his perspective. If you do well, would you not be accepted? It's one of my favorite verses, by the way, in the Bible. So let's look at that phrase, if you do well. If you do well. What is God telling Cain when he says, if you do well, it means you can improve. And you improve at 3 levels. God is saying, you have to change your attitude. If you do well means change your attitude. Change the way you feel about the situation. For the moment you are angry, you are upset, you feel hopeless, you feel like nothing can work, you feel you are a failure, You think this is the end of the road for me? I have failed before God himself. God says, it's not the end. You can change your attitude. If you do well means change your attitude. Secondly, if you do well means change your approach. Change the strategy you want to use to address this issue. Now, Cain's strategy was to go kill his brother. That was a strategy. God says, if you do well, you will be accepted. You have not been rejected permanently. It's a temporary setback in your life. You can turn around, you can change, you can do better, you can re-strategize, you can approach this differently. If you do well, means a change of approach. Thirdly, if you do well means change of your actions, change the way you do things. Change your actions. Cain had to realize that the reason he was rejected was not because God hated him. He's supposed to make a sacrifice, and we learn that he should have made a sacrifice of blood. But he made a sacrifice of plants. So God says, if you do well, you'll be accepted. If you go back and do the right thing, you have another opportunity. This is not the end. Tell the person next to you, this is not the end. I just feel somebody needs to hear that message this morning, that this is not the end. You may have failed once, twice, 3, 4, 5, but it is not the end. There is a choice you can make about this situation. And God says to Cain, if you do well, you'll be accepted. I like that phrase. It means that God can give me a new chance. This is not final. This is not my last stop. This is not the end of my story. This is not how my story will end. This is not a full stop. This is a sentence that is not yet completed. It is a sentence under construction. And if I do well, a but will be added to my sentence and a change in the construction. He fell, but he rose again. That's going to be your story. He fell, but he rose again. The righteous shall fall 7 times, but he will rise. You have to wait for but to be introduced to your life so you can see how this sentence will end its construction. It's a choice. And that's what God is saying to Cain. This is not the finality. If you do well, you will be accepted. Now let's look at the options that Cain was faced with. Let's look at his options. Because he's about to make a choice and he has an option. There are 2 options facing Cain on how to gain acceptance, how to get ahead in life, and he had to exercise either of these options. The first option is to destroy his successful brother. That's the first option. This is the option that eventually Cain opted for, preferred. It's also the option that most of us easily choose. And that's why our world has only a few successful people, because we tend to destroy those who are successful. You are in the office and you think you are the best worker in the office, and all of a sudden a new staff member comes. And he's outperforming you 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, and everybody's excited about him, and now you are old news and he's new news. and you feel rejected, you feel abandoned, you have an option. You can decide, I'm going to destroy this guy's career. I'm going to mess him up. I'm going to make sure people don't speak well of him again. That's an option. That was the first option that Cain had. Because in life, you're going to face somebody who is more successful than you. You're going to face him sooner or later. I face them, you face them. Everybody's going to face somebody who is ahead of you. And if somebody is ahead of you, you have an option. You can decide, I'm going to destroy him. That's option number one. And how is Cain going to do that? He was going to do that by blaming Abel for his failures. The blame game is as old as Adam and his family. Cain felt that the reason he failed to get God's approval was because of Abel. He didn't see his own inability. I'm sure he's saying to himself, if this second-born had not been born, God would have no option but receive my sacrifice. Now this guy has come along, and God has to make a preference, and he chooses him and leaves me. Well, if he was alone, he would still have been rejected. Because very often those who have problems never see the problem as their own. Yes, there are times when people will gain unfair advantage over you and use cheating and lies and deception to get ahead of you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that in life, regularly, people get along because they offer better service. Regularly. There can be extraordinary circumstances of people doing the wrong thing, but usually it is not because they cheated you, it's because you offered inferior service. So Cain could blame Abel for his failures and then find ways to eliminate him, to kill him. Now, some of us may not have the audacity to kill another human being in cold blood, but we kill them with our words. We assassinate their character. We whisper destructive stories about them. We instigate their destruction. Is that the approach you think you must have to the person who is successful around you? In your office? Have you started assassinating that person's character? Have you decided the only way I'll be accepted here is to destroy this guy? Is that the option you are exercising? The only way you can be successful is to destroy your brother, your sister, your younger brother who built a house ahead of you. What are the stories going around? Who are the people you are engineering to destroy him? Who are the people you're working with in your office to destroy that person who is doing so well? Why are you placing stumbling blocks in their way, making their work very difficult? Because you think the only way you'll be accepted is if they are eliminated. That's option number one. But there is an option. God says to Cain, if you do well, tell the person next to you, if you do well, you'll be accepted. All right. So what's the second option? The second option is that Cain himself could become a successful person. Instead of destroying a successful person, he could be that successful person. This was God's preferred path for Cain. And this is the path that God prefers for each one of us. We can choose to be successful. We can choose to become better people. It's a choice. So, if my older brother built a house before I built mine, I can decide to destroy him, or I can do well and build my house. So you have to decide, I'm going to be better not bitter. It's a choice. It's a choice. The spirit of Cain is still in this world. You go to all kinds of places. It feeds so much of what we do in this world. We get angry at somebody because he's doing well. You know, you stand by the road looking for transport and struggling to get transport, public transport or private public transport. It's raining. And you are angry with yourself and about your life and everything, and then somebody cruises along in his nice BMW with the windows rolled up, and you can feel that he is enjoying. You can feel it. And all of a sudden, you are angry with him. And you can say things like, oh, these people, they are crooks. Oh, these people, they are liars. Oh, don't mind these people. They are all cheats. Look at him. Look at him with his car. If the person happens to be a woman, you say, look at her. These girls, they just go and sleep with men. They give them the cars and they are bluffing with us. But you don't know her story. You don't know her story. But God says, if you do well, you'll be accepted. So instead of criticizing him for zooming by, you just say, next time, it's going to be me zooming by. It's a choice. You're going to go through life bitter and angry against successful people, or you're going to decide that you want to be successful yourself. Because success is not exclusive to anybody. God is telling Cain, it's not exclusive to Abel. Abel doesn't have a copyright on success. He just succeeded at this one sacrifice because he did the right thing. But you also, if you do well, you can also please me. So don't focus on his elimination. Focus on your elevation. Don't try to pull him down. Pull yourself up. Don't backbite him. Because if you backbite somebody, you will be permanently situated behind him. Because that is the only location where you have access to his back. God doesn't want you to be a behind person, backbiting people. He wants you to be ahead. He wants you to be the head and not the tail. And you have a choice with your attitude. You can choose, I want to become better. And to do that, you have to learn from your failures. Cain had to learn from his failures. Cain was not rejected because God was partial to Abel. He was rejected because he did not meet God's standards. Has it ever occurred to you that the reason why you fail at what you do is because you are not doing something right? Has it ever occurred to you that you are the problem? Not them, but you. And that's a painful thing. Because it's easier to point they are the problem than to say, I am the problem. But if you're going to do well, you have to learn from your failures. And I'm not saying that you're not working hard. I'm not saying you're not giving of your best. I'm not saying you are not sincere. I'm not saying you are living in sin. All I'm saying is that you may just be doing the wrong things with all your heart. As has been said, you can be very sincere and sincerely wrong. You're doing it with all your heart, with all your energy, but it's the wrong thing. If you're headed in the wrong direction, no matter how fast you drive, you are fast approaching the wrong destination. Has it ever occurred to you that you're the problem? Has it ever? That you're broke because of you? That things are not working for you because of you? Has it ever? And that's why God will come asking, why are you angry? Why are you upset? What's wrong? And believe you me, none of us want to point at ourselves. I don't want to point at myself. If I come to church and the church has dwindled in number, I'm going to blame you. I'll say my members are not serious. They don't love God. They are not serious with God. They don't come to church. It's easier than for me to say, could it be my messages are getting wacky these days? That's a painful question to ask myself. Because I'm going to say, but I prepare hard and I pray hard and I work hard, but working hard and praying hard and preparing hard doesn't mean you are preaching well. So I'm going to spend my time blaming all of you. Just get ready for that. And if your life is not going on well, you're not going to blame yourself. You're going to blame pastor. If my pastor was more anointed, if my pastor prayed more, if my pastor did it, my life would be better. No, it's not me. It's not the church. It's you. It's you. Because if you're going to do well, you have to face truth. You're going to face truth. If my marriage is not going well, it's easy for me to blame my spouse. Oh, my husband has no time for me. Oh, my wife has no time. Oh, my wife doesn't cook well. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Have you ever stopped to think it's not your wife, but you? It's not your husband, but you. That's why God will ask Cain, why are you angry? Why is your countenance falling? If you do well, will you not be accepted? Do you think I take pleasure in your failure? You have to learn from your failures and you have to improve on your performance. That's what Cain had to do. Next time he had to bring a goat offering to God, not tomatoes. Not pawpaw offering. God is saying, Cain, it's not magic. It's not a mystery. You can do what Abel did. If you do well, you'll be accepted. It's not about luck or chance. It's not partiality. It's not whether you are a male or female, black or white, in Ghana or Germany. If you do well, you'll be accepted. That is at the heart of my belief system. That is why I believe that we could build a world-class church in a third world environment. Because if you do well, you'll be accepted. If you do well. Geography is not a limitation. Culture is not a limitation. Your past and your history is not your limitation. If you do well, you'll be accepted. If you do well, you'll be accepted. If you do well, you'll be accepted. If you do well, it will be well with you. It's not about who your father is. Life has shown us so many permutations of people who were born on the backside of the desert rising to the front. Because if you do well, God can pick you from the ghetto and bring you to the palace. Instead of blaming people in the palace and criticizing them and fighting them, do well. And these two options are always open to us. You're either going to destroy somebody or you're going to become better. I want you to listen to what God says to Cain in verse 7 once more. He says, if you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin lies at the door. The chamber group just sang about it. Sin lies at the door. Its desire is for you, but you should rule over it. I want you to note the phrase, sin lies at the door. Sin lies at the door. The impression you get from that verse is that sin is outside seeking to come in. And the word that is translated lie in the original language is like crouching, it's like a lion that is crouched, ready to pounce, but it is at the door. No matter how ferocious the sin is, the temptation is, it is still at the door. It is outside, it is not in. You cannot prevent the devil from hating you, but you can definitely decide not to open the door for him. So, I want you to get this picture. There is sin at the door. Cain is here, and God is saying between the sin and you, there is a door. There is a door. What is that door? The door is your will. Your will is the door. You determine what comes in and what goes out by your will. It's a choice. He's saying to Cain, sin is lying at the door. It wants to come in, but it cannot force itself on you. Sin doesn't force itself on anybody. The devil cannot force himself into your life. When people say the devil made me do it, they forget that there is a door. And the devil cannot break the door. Sin lies at the door. What's the door? My will. My choice. Because no outside influence can come into your life without your permission. As powerful as a temptation is, it cannot force its way into your life. As powerful as a blessing is, it cannot force its way into your life. You must decide what you open the door to and what you shut the door to. No matter how much God wants to bless me, I have to open the door. No matter how the devil wants to destroy me, I have to open the door. So in the end, I am deciding whether a blessing is coming into my life or a curse is coming into my life. It's my choice. It's my choice. It's your choice. It lies at the door. Your will is the door. Everything that has entered your life you don't like, you can sack it. You can tell it to live your life. Everything. You determine what comes into your life and what doesn't come into your life. You determine what temptation comes into your life and what temptation doesn't come into your life. You determine what blessing comes into your life and what blessing doesn't come into your life. You are the doorkeeper to your life. So if you don't like all the things in your life, guess who opened the door? I know. It's easy to blame. But guess who opened the door to anger and frustration? Some of us are so frustrated. We are so angry. Our life is so bitter that nobody can stay around us. Because anytime people come around us, we are talking and people like that, and people, and you poison the atmosphere wherever you are. Guess who opened the door for bitterness? You did. And then you find people who are blessed. Whatever they do succeeds. Whatever they do succeeds. And guess who opened the door to the blessing? Them. Moses said to the children of Israel, I set before you life and death, birth, blessing, and curses. Therefore choose life. You have a choice. I'm telling you, you have a choice. If you hate your life, you have a choice to change. It's a choice. It's a choice. It's a choice. It's a choice. Cain, it's a choice. It's a choice. You can kill your brother or you can be better. If you want to spend all your life scheming to destroy people, it's a choice. If you want to spend all your life seeking to become better, it's your choice. If you're going to spend all your life gossiping, criticizing, insinuating about people, and look at what is that, and start to maneuver and destroy people's reputation, it's your choice. But if you do well, you will be accepted. All of us see people who are doing better than us. All of us. But if you do well, you'll be accepted. Your commitment, therefore, should be, I want to do well. No outside influence can come into your life. And God says sin lies at the door, but I want you to rule over it. Because we become slaves to whatever we submit our will to. If you submit your will to anger, you become a slave of anger. If you submit your will to jealousy, you become a slave of jealousy. If you submit your spirit to the Spirit of God, you become a slave of God. You do the will of God. If you submit your will to your flesh, you become a slave of your flesh. You control the door. Sin lies at the door. Its desire is for you. There is an agenda of Satan to destroy you, just like there is an agenda of God to bless you. You have to choose whom you open the door to. I want God to come into my life and bless me. I have to open the door. So how do we do that? How do we submit to God's will? Let me close with that. It's very sad that after all this advice by God, it's amazing. People say, if God himself showed up and spoke to me, I would do it. You wouldn't. You wouldn't.